Hi guys, Ann here. It's time for the May challenge for the Beginner Lampwork Challenge. This month we are working on Murrini, and that is my forte. I love making Murrini. I make all kinds, from the simple Starburst all the way up to mermaids and seahorses, and I just finished a sailboat the other day and a sea turtle, but I do all kinds of flowers and that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to teach you first is a basic Starburst Murrini, which is usually the first one people learn how to make. I'm going to start with a core of clear, and then I'm going to have some ivory, and then my lines are going to be made with turquoise. Okay, so those, I have my glass. Tools that you're going to need for this endeavor are a marver, graphite marver, which I just use whatever marver I have handy, with a handle so that I can hold it where I want it to be. You're going to need 2 punties. I like to use stainless steel large sized mandrels as my punties, but you can use whatever you want. You can use glass, you can use smaller rods, stainless steel punties, mandrel, whatever you want to use. Occasionally you'll need some tweezers. You'll need some sort of brass marver to move the glass where you want it to be, and then you're going to need some sort of nipper to cut, to nip the glass with. These are just a set that I always keep around my area here. These are not the ones that I use to nip my Murrini usually. I use the circle disc nippers, but these ones will work as well. These ones just are easy to get it off of the mandrels when I'm done making my Murrini. Alright, now some tools that you may choose to have. Okay, if you happen to have ever seen this guy will put the stripes, dents for your stripes, so that you know exactly you're getting 12 dents by putting your glass in there when you got it to that point. It's totally not a necessary tool, so if you don't have it, don't worry about it. If you do have it, work with it. I mean, you can only make fairly small Murrini pulls out of this because you can only put so much glass in there. So it's a tool. Then some other tools that I have are the shape tools. I bought these early on, and I do actually use these when I make my stars and that way I don't have to freeform. I do show you, my next video is a heart, and this one's a little flower. So those are just tools that you can have. If you have them, then use them. If you don't have them, it's no big deal. You don't need them. You can do the flower without this tool, and you can do the heart, the star without the tool. It's certainly possible. So we're going to light up. This torch that I use is a Carlisle Hellcat, and I love it because it has an inner flame, which is the mini CC, and then it has an outer flame for when I start working big on my Murrini. It heats it up faster. So let me just get that out of the way a little bit. So I'm going to build up my center core. My center core is going to be clear, just because that's what I want. If you don't want a center core, you can just build up with your ivory and then put stripes on it. That's a Starburst Murrini. Okay, you don't have to make it complex. It does not need to be super complicated, but the more layers you use, the more complicated it gets. The more colors you want in there, you can make it as complicated or as easy as you want. You can start with a solid core of an opaque core, or you can choose to use a transparent, which is what I'm going to do. And I am not making a super big one, so I'm not going to make my core really large. I'm going to use whatever marver comes to hand, and I'm just going to marver this into a cylinder. And And I'm going to flatten out this end. And then marver it into a cylinder. It's about 1 inch long. I find 1 inch to 1.5 inches is really as long as you want them to be. You can get a couple inches, but it starts getting a little out of control. So now I'm going to, using the swipe method, I'm going to lay a couple of layers of this is dark ivory. I find dark ivory to be the most reactive with the turquoise. So I'm going to go ahead and I start a little over the edge, and this one is poppy for some reason. That's the reason why you keep your pliers handy. Wait, tweezers, I mean, not pliers. Okay, so you're going to go over a little on this front end and over to where it's touching the mandrel on the back side. And I do that so that I don't have to worry about it stretching out evenly and bringing all of the color with it. I want it to go over a little on the top and then touch the mandrel on the bottom. Now if perchance when you're swiping you end up with a little hole that's not covered with, so you can kind of see the clear in there, I'm going to go and cover that hole right now with a little swipe in there. Okay? Now with soft glass, that's fairly easy to do. You can get it molten enough to just fill in that hole easily. If you're using borosilicate glass, it's a little more challenging. So you really want to try not to get any spots that you miss when you're swiping. Alright, so I'm almost done. I've got maybe 2 more swipes to go here. And 2. Alright, now I'm going to even this out. I'm going to pick a spot and heat it. Just going across that one spot, and then I'm going to marver it. Pick the next spot, heat it, and then marver it. I'm just trying to get the surface glass hot. I don't want it to go all the way down into the core of the white getting hot. It's going to some extent, but I'm trying to focus my heat on just that top layer of glass. Alright, so I've gone all the way around. You can see my clear in the center there. And I'm just going to push, I'm going to heat up the very tip, and I'm just going to make it flat again because it lost some of its flatness. And that's just so that when I add more glass to it, it's already kind of flat. And I'm not just adding clumps in one spot and thin areas in another spot. And I'm doing that same thing to this end here. I'm just using my marver to push that glass a little bit so it's squared off, kind of. Alright, so there's my little cylinder. And I'm going to go ahead and get my turquoise ready. Now these are, what do they call them? They have these labeled as 5 to 6 millimeters. Well, they're not 5 to 6. Maybe they are. Maybe they are 5 to 6 millimeters. I don't know. They're skinny. They're skinny. They're what are they called? They're stringers supposedly, but they're fat stringers. So I'm going to tack it down at the top over the edge and then pull it down with the glass just like I swiped the ivory on. Okay, so that's one. I want to leave ivory between them, so I'm going to leave a space that's almost as big or as big as my line of turquoise with the ivory. And since these turquoise stringers are so big, we're not going to get a whole lot of lines on this Murrini, but that's okay. You can have as many or as few as your little heart desires. And with these, I'm going over the top a little bit, and then I'm trying to tack it down to my mandrel. Now, I've come to the spot where I'm going to have to make a decision. Do you think if I can fit 2 in there, or if I should just go for the 1? And I'm thinking I'm just going to try and go for 1 here. And then I'm going to come with my little tool here, and I'm going to heat it up at the mandrel area, and I'm just going to make sure that those stripes are tacked down onto my mandrel. Because what happens if they're not tacked down onto that mandrel really well, when I start getting it hot enough, they might pull up and off of the mandrel, and then they won't go all the way down for me when I'm pulling it out. Now I'm going to heat up this top face, and I'm going to smush those guys down too, to make sure that they're going to meet in that center where I'm going to apply where I'm going to put my next punty. Okay, so they're on there. I'm going to get ready to punty up now. I'm going to heat the center of that face really hot, and I'm going to heat my mandrel really hot. And once they're both really hot, then I can stick that mandrel in there. Once I'm going to go up, I'm going to go down, and I'm going to go side to side to try and get all of those stripes onto my punty. Now that was not optimal for me. It cooled off too quickly, so I didn't have it hot enough. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just heating that same spot again, and then I'm going to do my up, down, right, left, and that gets it well adhered to both ends. And now I'm going to heat this little guy up until he's hot all the way through. This is when having a larger flame comes in handy. But since this is such a small Murrini, we don't need to go full hog, full force. So I'm going to come at it at different angles. I'm going to move my arms, and I'm going to come at this with the flame at different angles so that I can get these ends really well heated. Right now my big old stripes are not all the way melted in, so I'm not ready to heat this completely all the way through until all of my stripes are heated in. So, but while I do that, I can also be getting this whole mass warm. With turquoise, you have to be careful not to, if you start seeing it kind of sparkle, that means it's too hot and it's going to oxidize. It's going to get that ugly brown sheen to it. And that's where it's just bringing the metal oxides out to the top of the glass. That's all that is. Kind of makes it look schmutzy. It's not pretty. Alright, so my stripes are mostly melted in at this point. I've got it I'm trying to keep it from twisting, you know, too much. Sometimes when you have stripes, you're gonna see that it twists some. That just means that your hands aren't twirling the glass at the same speed. So I think I've got this heated up enough, and how I'm gonna tell if I do or not is to squish it together, and you see how it balls up, and then pull it apart, and see how it comes apart. That's how you can tell if it's ready to be pulled out. So I'm just going to give a little bit of insurance heat, make sure that we're good, and then I'm going to start slowly pulling it out. Okay, I'm still twisting while I'm pulling, and I'm doing it very slowly because I want these to be kind of fat little Murrini. I don't want super small ones. Once it starts tightening up though, I'm going to start pulling harder and faster because I want them to pull out. Okay? Now you see these ends? Those ends I'm going to nip off with my nipper. My little nipper that I keep handy at all times. And this guy is small enough that he doesn't need to go into the kiln. You only would need to put them into the kiln if they were probably this size. 10 millimeter probably is about what that is. Then you'd want to put your Murrini into the kiln to anneal. If you're just doing 5 to 7 millimeter ones, then you don't need to. Now these are what are called your dog bones. These are your leftovers glass that's not, you couldn't pull it down, okay? If it were really big, if there were a lot of it, I would want to save that, so I would put these in the kiln and then pull them down the rest of the way later, okay? So if they were something like this, I would want to use the rest of this dog bone later. That was my Jack Skellington one. So when I'm ready to pull the rest of this down, I'll put it into the kiln and heat it back up to 950. And then when it's up to that temperature, then I can take it back out, attach it to a punty, and then pull it the rest of the way. So sometimes I do right away and sometimes I don't, depending on how tired my arms are after making that Murrini. So these little guys are not worth saving to me. I'm just gonna let them pop off of the end. But this is the Murrini that I just made with that amount of glass. It's probably 4 or 5 millimeters thick. It's got a clear center, and then it's got the ivory, and you can see with the ivory and the turquoise, it has that really cool brownish line that you get there. So that's why I chose these two colors, because it really makes a cute Murrini. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have fun making Starburst Murrini.